At the time of recording this on Tuesday, the stock market seems to be bouncing back from a brief but steep plunge it took on Monday. But that didn't stop MAGA Republicans like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Fox propagandist Sean Hannity, and the entire House Republican Judiciary Twitter page from casting things in apocalyptic terms and trying to blame it all on President Biden and Vice President Harris. But unfortunately for all of them, they were hit with a series of brutal fact checks, and some of them came from pretty funny sources. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have a couple of clips to talk about in this video, but again, for context, as of now, the stock market seems to be bouncing back. As economist Noah Smith points out, hey, listen, stop panicking. The stock market is up 15% over the past year and 9% in 2024 so far. The prime age employment rate rose last month. Growth is strong. Consumption is strong. Productivity is strong. Because I think it was on Monday, it was the S&P 500, the Dow, they dropped about 1,000 points, right? So it was a brief but steep plunge. And a lot of people were saying this combined with the weaker than expected July jobs report means that we're on the cusp of a recession. And some economists believe that. Other economists say that we're not quite there yet, but we're certainly not in a recession now regardless. And again, at the time of recording, the stock market seems to be coming back. So this is good news. However, Fox propagandists, MAGA Republicans, all these people who are cheering for the economy to tank because they believe it would be politically advantageous for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the MAGA Republican ticket, kind of like how they behaved on the border, right? There was a conservative bipartisan border bill, which would have potentially helped stem the flow of illegal contacts at the border, undocumented contacts at the border. And Trump tanked his own conservative bipartisan border bill because he wanted to use it as a wedge issue against President Biden, right? It's kind of the same thing here. Republicans really want the economy to crash, no matter who it hurts, because they think it can be weaponized against President Biden. And now Vice President Harris, because she's the presumptive nominee. Sean Hannity is one of them. So Sean Hannity went so far as to not only blame Harris for everything here in the States, but also because the Japanese stock market dropped.
For the third straight trading day, stocks plummeting, collapsing amid fears of a global recession and rising unemployment, while major industries are buckling under high interest rates. The Dow was down more than 1,000 points. The S&P suffered its worst day since the market sell-off in 22, erasing $1.4 trillion in a matter of hours. This is day 3 of what President Trump is now calling the Kamala crash, and the hemorrhaging is not over. Japan's stock market, they just posted their worst day since Black Monday from 1987. All of this being fueled by the very real fears that the Biden-Harris economy will spiral this country in a full-on recession in spite of all the proclamations, of all the success of Bidenomics. Take a look.
So again, that's Hannity going out of his way to blame Harris for the state of the Japanese stock market. Again, our stock market seems to be recovering. It just goes to show how much of a partisan hack Sean Hannity is. And I say this as somebody who's proudly partisan with respect to the Democrats, but at least I can be consistent. Can Hannity actually point to something specific that President Biden and Vice President Harris did to trigger this stock market collapse? No, of course not. It's just happening on their watch. Now, if the shoe was on the other foot and the stock market crashed when when Donald Trump was president, would Hannity have blamed Trump? No, of course not. And that's why it's so funny, is because one of the fact checks which actually came from a fellow Fox News host, Neil Cavuto, who called out MAGA hypocrisy with respect to who controls the stock market, who gets the blame, and who gets the credit.
Neil, former President Trump has been sounding off about this economy on his Truth Social, writing, quote, "Stock markets are crashing, job numbers are terrible. We're heading to World War III, and we have two of the most incompetent leaders in history. This is not good." At a weekend rally, the former president emphasized what he could do if elected.
Inflation will be in full retreat. Our economy will be roaring back. It's going to be roaring back. Optimism will be surging. The American dream will be thriving again for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed.
His running mate, J.D. Vance, says Vice President Kamala Harris is extreme.
A lot of their economic policies were predicted, even by economists on the left, to lead exactly where they are now. They went ahead with it because, as Kamala Harris has said, she is a radical who didn't listen to common sense.
Harris's campaign today says Trump is not the answer on the economy. Quote, he's a millionaire bought and paid for by billionaires who will continue to screw over workers if he gets the chance. That's why American workers are already rallying behind Vice President Harris and will show up in droves to elect her pro-worker agenda this November. A California Democrat says don't expect big changes in a Harris administration.
Look, I think what she's going to be doing is telling the American people what they have been doing. And I think she's going to project a continued vision of the future for how our economy can work for everyone.
Today it was announced Gene Sperling is leaving the White House for the Harris campaign to be a senior economic advisor. Neil?
You know, Mike, I know and you do not politicize these things, but the Donald Trump thing in the market amazes me. When they're up, it's all because of him and looking forward to him. When they're down, it's all because the Democrats and how horrific they are. Yet some of our biggest point fall-offs, 3 of the biggest of the top 10, occurred during his administration. Now, a lot of those were in the COVID years. I get that. But, you know, you either own the markets or you don't. It does confuse me. But thank you for giving an overview there. We're going to be pursuing that.
So, again, I played some of this clip in a previous video yesterday. I just think it's worthwhile pointing out that Hannity blames Democrats for a brief economic pitfall, which seems to be recovering, gives them no credit for the strength of the economy, the 60 million jobs created on President Biden's watch, the stock market overall performing exceptionally well over the past several years. They get none of the credit, all of the blame. Then Republicans get all the credit, but none of the blame. It's just so funny that, again, he's being fact-checked in a roundabout way by a fellow Fox host. But Hannity wasn't the only one to run his mouth. J.D. Vance also did, and so did the House Judiciary Twitter page. And again, we'll get into some of these fact checks, but let's hear this from J.D. Vance.
We have got a war in Europe. We have got a war in the Middle East that threatens to spiral out of control. We've got chaos in the world financial markets. Everything that Kamala Harris touches has been a disaster, and we have got to kick her out of the United States government, not give her promotion.
So again, he doesn't point to anything specifically that the vice president did or didn't do, which contributed to the situation with respect to the Dow closing at 1,000 points, under 1,000 points on Monday. She's the vice president, ergo she gets the blame. Again, that apparently doesn't work for when the stock market is doing well and when the economy is doing well. None of the credit. But let's go to the House Judiciary page. So the House Judiciary, the House Republican Judiciary page, this is the committee that's led by Jim Jordan in the House of Representatives. They also try to get in on the action. They said yesterday, if you look at your 401k today, remember it was all brought to you by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Then they got hit with a brutal fact check on Twitter, which is effectively a right-wing cesspool. The NASDAQ is up 9.71%, 9.71% year to date, and up 29% since President Biden and Vice President Harris took office January 20th, 2021. People pointed out, it's up 40% since Biden took office. Thanks, Biden. And that actually got more approval, more likes than did the initial page. This thing got ratioed to hell and back. Thanks, Biden. It's 2 times better than it was under Trump. The stock market crashed 5 times under Trump. My 401k said to me, who voted for this loser? Community notes humiliated you. Remember when Trump was in charge of a crisis? I love this. If you go to the quote page, oh my God, you heard it from the GOP folks. You can thank Biden for how well your 401k is doing over the past 4 years. Again, just so funny that, again, even on Twitter, which is a home turf advantage for Republicans, they're still getting pretty brutally fact-checked. Steve Ratner, an MSNBC financial analyst, he also made a point that note to those trying to blame down stock market day on VP Harris. Stock markets have gone up faster under Democrats than Republicans, going all the way back to President Kennedy. It's true. Generally speaking, even the stock market is one of those macroeconomic metrics which performs better when Democrats are in power. Brendan Duke also pointed out that according to Moody's Analytics, which is one of the most reputable financial analyst firms in the world, that they actually project that the S&P will grow more quickly under a Democratic administration than a second Trump presidency. Moody's projected faster stock market growth in 2025 under a Democratic presidency than under another Trump presidency. 3.2% Democrat elected versus 1.4% under Trump. This stuff is fun to point out. It really is, because again, there's no question that at the end of the day, perception matters more than facts. Ben Shapiro says facts don't care about your feelings. But when it comes to voting, unfortunately, perception wins, right? We have to use the facts to make a persuasive case. The facts are very clearly on the side of the Democrats, just collectively. Not in every single instance, but far more often than not. And we have to use that to persuade people that actually, when it comes to the economy, Republicans are not better, but they enjoy a polling perception advantage. I mean, they do and have for 30 years. We have to fight like hell, metaphorically speaking, to break that perception. We have to use the facts to make a persuasive case and say, listen, the stock market does well, generally speaking, and better when Democrats are in power. Average GDP growth, job creation. My God, we've talked about this again and again and again. The job market under President Biden, even if you control for the pandemic, is simply better than it ever was under Donald Trump. And Donald Trump inherited a pretty good job situation from President Obama. But in the meantime, it's really funny to see these Republicans, be it on Fox or be it on Twitter or whatever, being fact-checked either by fellow Fox News hosts or by Twitter community notes and Twitter users. Really good stuff. I love it. I'm sure you do too. Let me know what you think in the comments.